Talking to Charlie Leager in this episode of Extreme Edge Cutting the Curves, member spotlight. Charlie came back to the farm as a middle-aged guy and went through some hardship. Great lessons to share with you in this episode.
Welcome to Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve podcast, where we cut your learning curve with insights you can apply immediately to your farming operation. This episode is presented by Loveland Products. When it comes to crop inputs, you need products that are field proven to deliver both results and value. For more than 50 years, Loveland Products has been providing farmers with high-performance, value-driven product solutions designed to maximize productivity on every acre. Visit lovelandproducts.com to see how their innovative products can help you farm more profitably. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve member spotlight, talking to Charlie Leager. Charlie comes to us from Maryland. That's right, another one of those Maryland farmers. He's a buddy with Temple Rhodes, and he's also a good dude who came back to the farm as a middle-aged guy full-time. See, he actually didn't have room on the farming operation, so he had to go and start his own business as a contractor. Then all of a sudden, his father dies. He comes back, takes over the thing full-term, and then also he goes through some hardship. There's a lot of lessons here, and we're going to talk to Charlie about his journey into farming, back into farming, I should say, from his childhood to today, and also the good things that he's applying and doing on his farming operation that he's taken from Extreme Ag. Charlie, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dean.
So anyway, when Temple said, hey, you should talk to this guy, he's got a good story. And it's not a good story. It's more of it's a good story that's a hard story. I was one of 9 kids. We didn't have much of a full size. I mean, our farming operation was a shoestring budget. There was obviously not enough living there for one family, let alone multiple families. So that talk that a lot of people had, hey, there's no room for you here, kid. Go do your own thing. A lot of people have had that over the years. You went away and started your contractor business and you were in construction. Then you assisted, but you came back full time. So kind of give us that journey, because a lot of people are probably going through that still with their own situation, or even they're bringing the next generation back.
Absolutely. Back in the day, growing up on the farm, I helped from a very young age. And then as I was going through high school, the years got lean, the droughts, the floods, there was multiple people from their family that worked together. So I was low man on totem pole. Unfortunately, I had to leave the farm. There just wasn't enough there to support, as I was getting older. So I had to go into the contracting business, which did me very well. But I always helped on the farm, during the seasonal times, spring and fall, after my construction job, so on and so on. So from that, my first passion was always farming, but I did what I had to do to survive. And I loved the construction business. It was very good to me. I built some beautiful multi-million-dollar homes, and it goes right back into the same scenario, passion of farming. You also have a passion, whatever job you do, whatever that may end up being. If you take and put yourself into that and you put 100% into it, good things come out of that. And that's what I did with the construction. I met some really good people. So it did me well, but like I say, my first passion was farming. And then of course, when my father passed, in 2020, it kind of threw me right into the fire per se. I had to make I either had to make a move. I was either going to do it or I wasn't. And I really wanted to at least try. I knew I could never live myself if I didn't at least try. So here we are.
You still got your construction business going, right?
That's correct. Yes.
So
but on a much smaller scale.
Okay, so here's what's interesting is that you said, oh, so I had to go out and start this thing. Starting a business building homes is not like nothing. I mean, this isn't like, oh, yeah, so I went and got a government job. I mean, you're talking about you started a business. You were a young guy and you started and so there's a entrepreneurial vein in you, clearly. So a lot of people that our farm people have side businesses, but this was a full-blown business. You were building $1 million homes, and then you came back to ag. This wasn't like, oh, I sell seed on the side, or I also go and do some. So tell us about that.
Sure. So like I say, it was very demanding, a lot of phone calls. And the neat part with technology of today, you can actually do two things. It's tough on a full-time basis, which has been mentally challenging, needless to say, and financially challenging as well. But you can, with technology of today, you can do two things at once, which, as we say, it's definitely challenging, but it can be done.
Did you start the construction business from scratch?
With what?
You started your construction business from scratch?
Yes, that's correct.
You had a truck and a hammer. You had a truck and a hammer, and said, "I'm gonna come and build a house for you."
Well, let's hold back. Let's hold back a little bit. There's a little more to the story, and like I say, we might have to do a series of podcasts here to tell the whole story of all of it, complete to every little detail. But I actually went to work as a delivery guy from a lumber yard, and from that, I met a guy that I delivered lumber to that was worked by himself. He was 10 years my elder. He was an Italian, so he was a little hard-headed. And I took a liking to him. He took a liking to me, and he said, "Look, I was asking. I didn't want to be a delivery driver all my life,
Right.
So I asked him. I said, "Look, are you looking for some help?" And he said, "Absolutely." So I actually went to work for this guy one-on-one, and then we became in business together. 2 years, 3 years after that. So I did have an experience. I had somebody take my hand and help me, and he was really a detail guy. Everything had to be perfect from the ground up, and that taught me a lot. Because we even did, not to get technical, but like the framing part of it. If something was an 1/8 inch out of square, we were taking things apart and putting them back together to make it perfect. It had to be perfect, and so therefore. That taught me. I learned the right way, right out of the gate at a young age. So on the construction side, well, he was 10 years my elder. I'm a young guy. He was one job at a time. I was kind of looking at multiple. I felt like as a career path, I need to do more than one job at a time. I had to do multiple jobs to make a decent living out of it. So that's where we kind of clashed, and we separated. We basically went through our own little business divorce, but I still talk to him on a monthly basis, even today, after 23 years of business for myself. Yeah. So, so it was one of those, but that's where I learned on the trade side, on the construction side. I actually had a mentor that taught me the trade well and how to do it well. And I'm a hands-on guy, so I'm not a checkbook contractor where I'm a job with a tool bag. I'm driving nails just like everybody else. I'm there. And that's back to the farming thing where you're hands-on. I've always been a hands-on guy.
So when you talk about having this mentor too, you're handy because you're a farm kid. All of us had to do certain stuff. I still find it funny. People say, "I'm surprised you know how to do this." I'm like, "Well, you think this is the first time I've had to touch a wrench? You think this is the first time I've had to do this?" So you were handy. Then you became a construction guy. What was the farming involvement with over those years? You're 50. What are you? You're almost my age, like 53 or 4 years old.
56. Right? I'm 56. I'm 56 now.
Yeah. So you're in your 20s. You've got to make a living, and you've got your construction job going, and then you got your construction business that you've fused with your mentor. Where was farming during that time?
Well, what I did on that was I picked up the pieces anywhere I had to pick up the pieces, whether it be run a planter, run, whatever it may be, run a combine. There's always been, there on the farm, there's always something that has to be done. So during the busy time, I would do that. Now at the later years, the last 10, 15 years prior to my father's passing, I did all the planning. I did all the technical things. He ran the combine. He did, that was his thing. So that was, so basically in the beginning was a little bit of everything. And then toward the end, it was the technical stuff that, you got to be really
When your dad
detailing
told
about.
you, when your dad said, "Hey, you like this farming thing, but you're going to have to go and get a job because there's no room for you here." And again, a lot of us have been through that. Uh, was there another sibling? Was like there an older sibling? Was there somebody else that was already sitting there?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I have an older sister.
And was she involved in the farm?
No, she was not involved in the
And
farm.
never wanted to be.
No, she never. She had her own path. She had her own path. She never wanted to be a part
Got it.
of
So
of
when
that.
you were then running your working for somebody else or running your own construction business, you were involved in the farm as an as needed basis. But then was there that time when your old man says, "Hey, I'm getting older. Maybe it's time for you to be a little bit more involved," or how did besides him dying, how was the handoff? I'm assuming that there was a little bit before that where it's like, "Hey, you know what, Charlie, we need you to be involved here."
Well, there comes with age, there comes dependency, and it got to the point where, a full 8 hour day on the job and then go there. It was really late in the day, so it got to the point where I had enough good help in the construction field that usually by lunchtime, 1 o'clock, I could peel out of the job site and go. So I was earlier, and that transpired 10 years or more prior to his death. So so it seemed like he got dependent on coming there at lunchtime. He was used to that occurring. So that's where it rolled into that dependency. But he also saw the drive that I had to continue the farm operation.
And that began when you were in your late 30s, 40.
Yeah, that would have been in my late 30s, early 40s. Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
All right. So, from the business standpoint, did you have that discussion back then? Like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to be involved now, and here's how we should structure this," or was it, "Well, when I die, then it'll be yours"? Was there already a handoff going on?
No, there was no, the thought in his mind, but it was always like, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Sometimes the older generation is, we'll kick that can down the road. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. And that's the tough. I think his hope was that I would continue the farm operation, but we never had that, deal where he planned for the future. That did not happen.
Yeah. Well, by the way, that's a big problem, and I've been covering that on some other episodes about the business side of
That's
agriculture,
a
and
that's
it creates
that's
a
a
lot of
really
hassle.
big problem. That is a big problem, and I would advise anybody, if they have a thought of their next generation taking over, they really need to have that discussion. They have to have a good plan, because when that occurred, we're talking. My father passed at the end of May, and when that occurred, the corn had been planted. The soybeans had not been planted. We're dealing with a harvest season just a few months away, and all of a sudden I'm handed. I had no skin in the game at all, as far as no control over any suppliers, the farm checkbook, no, what I mean. So I really got handed a turd, per se, when my father passed. Um, that all of a sudden I really had to take the bull by the horns, like really, really rapidly. And then not only that, and we haven't got to the fire yet, but when that happened, that was like, man, how much can one person take? How much can one person deal with?
Yeah, so I
That's
mean,
where.
and I want to be in all due respect, as we always politely say, your dad's a good guy, presumably, but not business minded. And we've been covering this a lot on other episodes of the Cutting the Curve. You said you got handed the turd, and you're being very polite. You got handed what could have been an absolute disaster, and that's where I keep bringing on different guests to talk about that transition and that business thing. This guy had no backup. He was in his 70s and had no backup, and didn't even have anybody else that knew where the switches were. That knew which levers to pull.
Yes, yes, and that's true. But I was one of those kids. I was one of those people that always paid attention. Always paid attention who was coming in the door, who was going out the door of the shop. I just paid attention, and there was people that came through the door that I didn't necessarily admire, didn't think they were on the same page as my father per se. I didn't think they were necessarily helpful. So, but I paid attention. I was one of those kids that paid attention. And I had with some of the suppliers, I had a relationship with the managers because I was the guy dealing with the seed, the planter, the some of the chemicals that were going in it, the starters, the so on and so on. So I did have those relationships with the people. I just didn't have the financial part. I wasn't dealing with any of that at that time.
Yeah. I want to get into then the handoff of the business and then where you've taken it, because I think it's pretty exciting stuff. And obviously you're doing a good job. And Temple speaks very highly of you. I want to get into that. Before I do that, I want to ask you, dear listener and viewer, are you ready to stand up to weather-induced crop stress? Of course you are. You know what?
Absolutely. Yes.
It's always a question. We've got crop stress. So I want to talk to my listeners here, Mr. Charlie, about a product called Terramar. Terramar is an innovative biostimulant technology from Loveland Products designed to help your corn and soybean crops thrive, even under stressful conditions. Try Terramar, exclusively available from Nutrient Ag Solutions. All right. So you've got
to add to that, I've actually used the product.
You've used the product.
Absolutely use the product Terramar. Yes, absolutely.
And you speak highly of it.
Last year.
And
I do see where the stress reducers are helping. And because I'm all dry land, I do not have any irrigated ground. So it's really important for me. I've got to deal with the stress factor. And I've seen those stress mitigators. I've actually seen those work very well.
Interesting. I want to talk about the coming back into the farming operation. So you always pay attention. Your dad didn't necessarily set the table for you very well. And that's always a challenge. And then you're coming in and you're like, okay, and it's still planting season. I got to bury my dad, and then I got to put in the soybeans. I got to bury my dad, and then finish out some crops. And then you still also have your own construction business. Pretty stressful time. And the good news is, do you think it's easier? Is it easier to do that when you're a middle-aged guy than when you're young? When you're young, you have more energy. When you're old, you don't have as much energy, but you have more experience. Like you can almost, it might be easier when you're older to compartmentalize. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, absolutely. And I'm a stress guy anyway. So I can handle it because of the $1 million homes and all that stuff carries a lot of stress. Because it's not the cookie cutter houses, where you just come up and move on up the street. Where the multi-millions, you've got to have everything thought through the process. So I've already been, I was used to the stress of things. Now, when it got compounded the way that it did, that was definitely challenging, no question. And middle age definitely helped with the experience of the construction business. It allowed me to have that mental capacity to handle that, and I don't know, I guess a good way to put it is when to call a spade a spade. You could tell when somebody was blowing smoke up your butt. You could say, oh, no, we're not doing that. This is the way we're going to do it. This is the way we're going to handle it. So at a young age, it's hard for you to do that. But when you become in your 30s and 40s and you've been around the block a little bit, you start to realize who's there in your corner and who's not.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to see.
Well, you've talked about your father, and then you talk about this handing things off, and I want to give a little bit of a pat for what we do here at Extreme Ag. When did you come across the Extreme Ag thing? Because you've obviously used this as a resource for your, going back into being the full-blown production agriculture guy. What have you gleaned out of our situation? What have you gleaned out of what we're doing?
You've also, to go back to the history standpoint where I come from. My both sides of my grandparents were farmers. Both sets of my great grandparents were. So we're multi-generational farmers. So we always, this goes into the scenario when I wasn't comfortable, like I told you, where I paid attention all along the path. We here on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, we never really had our hands available to agronomists. We always had a salesman telling us what we should do and not do. And as it become corporate, you could tell, and because I was dealing in the construction business, you saw some of the corporate, the monies, this and that, whatever. you start to realize that when it gets to corporate, that there's an agenda there. They're pushing products, they're pushing things. Well, I didn't necessarily like what some of them had to say or did. I didn't know if that was necessarily right. And as Temple and the other guys, Matt and all the other, said, you know, your dirt is your dirt. Nobody knows your dirt better than you. So the salesman is trying to sell those products that as a general, to make profits on their sales and all that. And I get that. And I understand it. And I'm not trying to take it away from them. But my dirt is my dirt. And so I took it, that's where I started to Google do research on
Yeah.
different things. Like now I could argue or debate my sales. Like, nah, I don't think that's the best path for us to take. I think we need to try this, or this. And then, of course, then the debates start. Well, sometimes they get a little frustrated because that's not what they want to hear. So that's one thing Extreme Ag and the internet has taught me or showed me, that there is other ways to get to the end result that you're looking for without necessarily being told or sold a product that doesn't work for you. And because everybody's dirt is different, so you got to figure that out. You gotta do your research, dig up. We never did, Damien. We never dug up plants. All the years I farmed, my father, my grandfather, we never dug up, look at root structure. We didn't, tissue samples. We didn't do those things. We just went by, the salesman drive by and said, man, everything looks great. Corn looks green. Well, okay, well, it's green. Is it healthy? Is it really good? So, and that's where we're taking a little step further and really, really, really looking. And I've met some really, with Extreme Ag, I've met some really, really good people that, and I went by the philosophy in construction. If you surround yourself with good people, good things will happen. So that's my take on what I've learned from Extreme Ag. Is now I can debate my salesman. And know what I'm talking about.
We did a recording with Temple a week or so ago, and the topic came about taking back your farm. And we're going to do more on that topic, but it's not that you are getting screwed. It's not that you're being taken advantage of. It's just that you've got a lot going on. In your case, you've got a construction business to manage. You've got a farm to manage. You've got a lot of stuff you're taking on. It's not unreasonable that you then utilize the services of a sales rep, an agronomist, a consultant, whatever. But the problem is, after 1, 2, 5 years, you almost get it on cruise control where, well, Joe told me this and Cindy told me that. And it's almost like, wait a minute, maybe it's time to reevaluate. And that's kind of what I'm hearing, is that you like to look for different angles on stuff to say, why are we doing that again? I mean, it's questioning, and it's not questioning just to be obstinate. It's questioning because you want a better outcome.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely correct. But also, you got to understand, I watched my father, my grandfather, I watched them farm on hope. We put it out there and we hope for the best. We hope it all works out. Hope doesn't pay the bills. We got to be methodical. We got to be methodical and have a plan. Now, Mother Nature might have a different, outset, from that, but we have to have a plan. And I think if you can make your plant as healthy as you possibly can make it, and that's where the Extreme Ag, to take it a step further, this is where, we used to always front load our crop, and a lot of our soybeans. We used to front load, put a lot of money out, and once again back to hope, and hope it all worked out. Well, now with the technologies of today, now we're trying to figure out how we can do as little as possible to get it a good start, but then spoon feed that crop as we go along. Of course, as Temple, where we're on the Chesapeake Bay watershed, so we got to be careful with our management plans. So we can't just do crazy stuff anyway. But we're trying to learn, how we can spoon feed this along as Mother Nature cooperates, especially on dry land. How can we get the best bang for our buck, the ROIs? And look, Damien, these are all things that, GDUs and PGRs, these are things 3-4 years ago, you asked me, I'd be, what the hell is that?
Yeah,
I didn't know what it was. Now it's everyday conversation about, which which Extreme Ag and all the guys have been very helpful with that. Because I throw in questions, and I get answers and replies, and hey, it's been good.
I didn't know what a plant growth regulator was until I started working with these guys, and there's a lot of other things I didn't know. I'm going to throw this out there because there's a couple things. First off, farming has that family connotation, and you're expected, whether it's going to church, going to the local ag meeting, or going on social media. We're supposed to be all about the family side and the beautiful sunsets, and that's all great. I love that stuff. But I get in talking to you, you're a business guy, and that's why you just said hope doesn't pay the bills. You said your dad died and left you a hell of a mess. And you said to everybody, get your stuff set up, get that transition thing set up. Were you a business guy and then came back to the farm, or did this whole, how did this thing, because it's not that you're unemotional, but you're almost like, hey, damn it, this needs to be done. Like I get the idea that you're very pragmatic and business minded.
Well,
and so
yes,
am I. By the way, I get bashed on. I get bashed on about that also. Like, Damien, your business, you don't. Well, I came up with a bunch of non-business minded people. My parents were not business minded people, good hard workers. And I'm like, why are we working this hard instead of working smart? And that's where I guess I'm going with this.
Yes, and that's where I know, look, the farming is very challenging. Anything, construction business, the contractor, it's all very challenging. And you've got to watch the pennies because, the dollars take care of themselves. I had an older gentleman tell me one time, the dollars take care of themselves, watch the pennies. And once again, I listened to the older generations, and I always admired what they had to say because you could learn a lot from them. So, and this farming is so critical on watching, you've got to watch dollars and cents, and then comes I'm trying to I'm fighting for pennies. So anything I can do, and look, I'm not afraid to spend the money if I think I'm going to get a return on that money spent. So I guess that's where the business comes in. I'm afraid to spend it because you can certainly be too tight in this game, and we're back to hope again. Put a little bit in hope for the best. Well, once again, hope doesn't pay the bills. I just send to the power company, I love you, and expect to get my electric bill, funded or taken away. So, so we got to be methodical. All farmers have to be nowadays methodical in the process. Because if not, it's going to chew you up. Man, there's a lot of dollars traded in the farming industry.
You can be respectful. You can be respectful, but also critical about the people that were before you. And what I'm hearing is when I said I was raised by hardworking people, but not business-minded people, I'm almost getting that same thing from you, that you're respectful, but you also are critical, saying, should have done this, should have done that. I'm going to do better, and here's how I'm going to do it. And that's how I think businesses evolve and improve.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not trying to dish what my predecessors, my father, because he survived that long. In the ag industry, he survived that, that long. But I just that things have changed as time goes on. Mother Time takes care of, it's different farming in the 2020s than it is in the 1980s, 1990s. It's different. It's just different. A lot of, like I say, once again, a lot of money exchanging hands, a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. So, by the way, let's talk about your operation. And incidentally, and we're not going to gloss over this, but there was other hardship. A couple months after your dad dies, you're thrown back into the operation, and you're doing it. You also had a fire and lost all your equipment.
Yes, 2 months almost to the day of my father passing. I got the phone call at 2:30 in the morning that our shop was on fire, and don't be in a hurry to get up the highway. I'm about 20 minutes away, and said you're not going to be able to save anything. Well, needless to say, as I'm driving up the highway at about 80 miles an hour or 85, I'm looking up in the sky, like, how much more can I take? Is this a sign? Is this a sign from my father? Like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you? So that was completely devastating, and that was one of them. The shop was a secondary farm. Um, that was like home base. That's, I assumed that building, that those pieces would always be there. The heritage of my grandfather's father's,
Yeah.
wrenches, tools.
Right.
We had multiple service trucks in there. I just assumed that stuff would be around forever, and never in a million years did I ever think I'd get that phone call that you've lost about everything. So that's that was like, at that point, like, wow, where,
Right. How many years ago was this?
what
How many years ago was this?
what's that?
How many years ago was this?
This was in 2020. It's 3 years ago.
3 years
A little
ago.
over 3 years.
So where are you now? Where are you now? 3 years later, where are you? You're in your fourth season of calling the shots. Where are you now?
Well, actually, I'm in a very, like I say, I'm in a really, wow, I'm in a good spot because, the commodity market's done well. And our crops have been phenomenal. So, I'm really comfortable, but unfortunately, I need a few more good years under my belt before I get comfortable, because, like I say, it was basically like starting over again. The ground, the relationship with the landlords, was there, so that's why that was a big plus. After my father passed, that I was able to keep, because that's the hard part, is acquiring land to till. As we all know, that's a battle. So that battle was already taken care of. So all I had to deal with was the equipment. So after the fire, I reached out to about all the suppliers, and I'm back to that. We were Case IH. My father was loved, my grandfather, but I put it out there to all of them. How can you help me in this situation? What I have, I've been thrown a turd here. What can we do? So, and the majority were helpful, because they were, a lot of them were, what do you have to have for the fall harvest? Because once again, the fall is in July. We're starting harvest in September.
Yeah.
And needless to say, the insurance company from the fire, which that's a whole nother podcast, that battle, but they send a check for, it's an over $1 million claim, and they're sending a check for $10,000. Like, well, this will help you with fall. Well, that really doesn't do me a whole lot of good.
right. You give me $10,000 to help me along to get to fall. I can't rent a combine for the fall for 10 grand.
For 10 grand. So that's where I had to lean on some machinery dealers, like, this is what I got. What can we do? How can we do it? So on and so on. So trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and some were extremely, some were very, very helpful. So, and they said, look, we'll get you what you have to have. And that's, and that worked out. So, and then, so like I say, I put it all out there, and then whoever could work good with me, the good people around you, so on and so on. I said, that's where I went to purchase a lot of the equipment for after I got through the fall, and I kind of cleared through the mess and through the hurdles, and it was, like I say, it was, we're talking a whole different storyline there with the insurance claim of that magnitude.
So you had you got obviously your mom's still alive?
Yes, mom is still alive. That's correct.
So
yes.
it's not as though you just inherit everything, because the truth is some of your father's assets, or many of them, most of them probably go to her. So from a business structure standpoint, are you comfortable with the way you're structured now?
I am comfortable. Yes, I am comfortable. If it had to, if all those line of events had to happen, it couldn't if it had to happen, and look, I didn't want it to happen, none of it to happen, but if it had to happen timing wise, it worked out to my favor only because COVID hit after that, and then used equipment become hard to get your hands on. It become extremely more valuable. If all that things had happened 2 or 3 years after it actually did happen, I don't know that I could have continued to farm because those things became out of reach. At the time it all occurred, it was within reach. You could actually make it work on paper. It penciled out. So that's where timing plays into all this as well. It's all goes into timing.
So, are you buying, or did your mom say, "Man, you're going to take this"? I mean, is it work on paper? You talk about making it work on paper. Technically, it's there's still a lot of things to be worked through. You have a sibling, you have a mom, and you've got this farming operation. You've got your construction business. This could be a lot. This could be a little overwhelming.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing with the after my father's passing, I began to take pictures. I assumed there was going to be a buyout. I was going to buy my mother out of the farming, the equipment, all that stuff. So I began to take pictures of serial plates, pictures of the equipment, so we get appraisals done on the equipment. I did not know I was going to use those for the appraisal for the fire.
Right.
I'm considering I'm taking those as the appraisal to buy my mother out of the business. So that part kind of worked out. Now that I think that would have been easier to do, to buy my mother out, buy the equipment from my mother, but unfortunately with the fire, the insurance money that was hers.
Yep.
That was my mother's money because that was my dad's equipment. So now I had to go buy equipment. So I cleaned all that up, but yet it made it more complicated because it probably been financially easier to deal with my mother buying it out than it was. Now I'm going, sold to buy the equipment. So that's like I say, it was a lot to process in a very short window, as you can imagine. But I say if it happens to anybody, just hold your head high and just keep trudging forward, and you'll get through it, get to the other side, because it is worth the fight.
Yeah, that's really good parting advice. Do you have any other parting advice? Incidentally, the here you are, you're in your fourth crop season now. You still excited?
I am. I'm still excited. Yes, and I'm always looking for that next product. It's going to be, it's going to be the next one that we do, because we're doing a lot of trials. We're trying things as we go to see what benefits us. And I have a son that's 29 years old, so that's very helpful. He's on the farm with me as well. So that's been, so you're seeing that. And everything that I'm doing, I try to explain to my son. My father and I didn't necessarily have the best communication skills. We talked, but he didn't necessarily tell me why he was doing what he was doing. I tried to do that with my son. I try to walk him through, so God forbid he's not blindsided, kind of like I was. So I involve him, and I question and answer. What do you think about doing this? What do you think about trying that? So and that's part of the reason that keeps me. The drive keeps you going too. To get through the next year, get to the next year, get to the next year. So on and so on. So hopefully, if it all works out,
we're recording this in November of 2023. Looking to 2024. Give me one big initiative, one big thought, one big idea for 2024 that you're rolling around.
Ooh, that's a trick question, because there's so many thoughts bounce through my head. I have a lot of voices in my head, but I would say what scares me is the commodity. You start to see the commodity market go down, kind of spiral down a little bit here, becoming more challenging. So how can you get the good crop? How can you grow that crop and produce enough to make it through, to get to the next year? I guess that would be my biggest take on what's coming up for the following year. How can we keep the good production going, and we're not going to have the monies available to throw at it like we have in the past, because the commodity market the way it is. So markets are challenging. That's what I see.
Well, I think that's accurate. One big thing you're going to try though, you got anything you're excited about that you're like, hey, one thing I'm going to do I've never done before?
I
New
can't think
product,
of
new
any.
practice.
Um, New products. I can't. I haven't done enough research yet this far to go through my analysis of all my data to say what new product would be in my. I know Terramore is definitely one of them that I'm definitely considering as a across the board product
I like
and every
that.
pass.
I like that. All
And
right.
only another thing that I did is the very first piece of equipment that I bought was a sprayer. Before I bought a tractor, before I bought a combine, because I needed to learn the chemistry of what we're trying to do. And that's been so far, Damien, I haven't killed anything yet that I'm not supposed to kill. So, but I know what I'm putting in that sprayer, I know what I'm dumping in there. And that's what's really been beneficial to me is I'm seeing the result. I got clean fields. And everything is growing well and healthy. So that was very very helpful for me to learn that side of the farming.
It's
The chemistry
interesting.
side.
You talked a lot about learning and whatnot, and that's what we're all about here. So I think that's kind of cool. And you're 56. Unfortunately there's people that aren't listening to what we do, and they're your age, and they think that they know everything. And I feel bad for those people because here you are saying I'm still learning and
Absolutely.
trying and trying.
Yeah, and you got to, it's back in the day with the other equipment. You were lucky if you got one new piece a year or one new piece every 3 years. Well, you got to keep in mind that fall of that year after the fire, I'm dealing with all new equipment, sprayer, planter, that's auto shutoffs, row shutoffs. The technique and all that. I had to learn that in 1 year.
Yeah.
You talk about challenging. There was days that I'm like, man, is it worth all this crap? Holy moly! Little tricks that one piece is bad enough to learn, but when you had to learn multiple pieces, that was really tough. That was make you
Jumping off the high dive, no floaties.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, I didn't want to say that out loud, but yes, definitely, it was definitely challenging. It was tough. It was
All
tough.
right.
But hey, we got through it. We got through it. We're moving on, and hey,
I want you to come back in a couple of years and tell me, almost like 5 years, 6 years into reassembling and joining the farming operation, and tell us what the next thing is. Because I get the impression that you're doing a lot of things and you're excited about it, and you probably are going to say, geez, just in 2 years, I realized I'm making mistakes over here. So I want you to come back in a couple of years. His name's Charlie Leager.
But it might be one of those things that told you how stupid I was 2 years ago too. We're thinking what I was thinking. We don't know, but
successful people admit that they were doing stuff wrong in the old days, and that's why they're successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the only way I learn is by doing dumb stuff. And like that was stupid. Don't ever do that again. So I'm a hands-on guy for that crap. That's for sure.
Yes. I like it. He's a business guy too. All right. His name is Charlie Leager. He's a member of Extreme Ag. If you are listening to this and you want to be a member of Extreme Ag, remember just $750 a year. It's a very, very small down payment on all the return you're going to get from the lessons, the trials, also the interaction. Even Charlie talked about it. You can go in there and type in a question and get feedback from the Extreme Ag guys. So it's a beneficial thing. He's one of our members. It's a member spotlight. He's a Maryland guy. If you're wanting to look up Charlie Leager, if they want to find you, how do they find you? Somebody says, hey, man, I got a question.
Man, just email me, cjleager@gmail.com.
cjleager@gmail.com. Hope doesn't pay the bills. I wrote it down, and the dollars will take care of themselves. Watch the pennies. I love it. He's got some wisdom. Anyway, his name's Charlie Leager. My name's Damian Mason. Thanks for being here. Till next time, this is Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve.
That's a wrap for this episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. But there is plenty more available by visiting extremeag.farm. For over 50 years, farmers have turned to the proven lineup of crop inputs offered by Loveland Products. From seed treatments, plant nutrition, adjuvant, and crop protection products, Loveland has the complete lineup to keep your farming operation productive and, most importantly, profitable. Check out lovelandproducts.com to learn more.